Is that recording?
It is.
Well, that was simple.
Yeah. Well done, Charlie. I'm
Are
proud of
you
you.
sure?
It's got a little record button in. So it's got a little record button in the top right-hand corner for me. So yeah.
I mean, my concern is we're going to do what we did the other year when we did something like this and we recorded 3 hours.
Oh gosh, yeah.
How are you doing?
I am doing absolutely fabulous. That's not my real voice, by the way. I'm doing fine. I'm doing good. It's going through the highs and lows of another lockdown, as I think everyone else is. But at the end of the day, oh hello, that dog,
Sorry,
by the way, disappeared behind her. Absolutely hates me. Anyway, yeah. So I'm doing good. Having many ups and downs, if I'm honest. Last few days I've been feeling quite unmotivated and stuff, and I'm putting that out there because actually that's like really natural, particularly at the moment, with everything going on. But on the other side of it, I'm alive. No one that I know has died, as far as I know. And
it'd be a bit of a way to find out on here, wouldn't it?
Gosh, yeah, I know. So yeah, I'm doing okay is the best way of saying it. I'm not experiencing the worst of it, but there's definitely been some challenges along the way as well.
Yeah. Okay. So like, one of the things I found most challenging is like trying to manage your well-being during the whole thing, like trying to actually look after yourself.
Yeah.
How's that been for you?
So it has been a challenge, and I haven't always wanted that challenge, if I'm honest. I'm the sort of person who, generally speaking, prefers to live in chaos as much as possible anyway. But what I kind of realised...
busy person. You are such a busy person, man.
I am a busy person, but one of the things that I realised right back at the beginning is if everything is going to be in chaos anyway, that actually what I needed to do was to get some things in place which actually counteracted that. So I had to be quite intentional about certain things. And one of the things that Dr. Kate Middleton, who's a psychologist, says is that actually you should keep doing a lot of the things that you would have done, because it's those things that give your brain a bit of familiarity that it uses to basically to anchor the rest of your day around, so it knows where it is at any particular moment. So one of the things I said to Charlie today, just before doing this, we put it off by about 20 minutes because actually I realised that I needed to make sure that I ate at a specific time, which might sound really stupid, but just getting those...
it reminded me to eat.
Accountability. It just reminded me. It just reminds your brain, and it just gives you various things throughout the day where actually your brain can go, okay, this is normal, I understand this, I know this, and gives your brain a bit of a break, basically. I think that has been one of the most important things for me to do and to try, I'd say, with that.
That is one of the things, isn't it? Like that normal routine that we don't realise how much we
need it.
Struggle when we don't realise how much we struggle when it's gone. But we never ever saw this happening. So for this to have happened pretty much overnight, and then our whole way of life adapt, it's going to have an effect on our brains, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, managing the process of grieving is really important. Let's give it a name, grieving. So at the moment, I can feel myself, even just going into this new one, grieving for certain things which I could do before, like for me going to the gym, which is now impossible. I remember, and me and Charlie, with the first lockdown, we were basically both almost in tears when Boris announced that no one could see each other again. And that's the real thing, that's grieving.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to with your friends, if you were to say you were going to move away for 9 months or a year, then you'd go through that process of grieving them and missing them, and that's just really the most important thing with that, is to accept that, I think, and not to feel like it should be any other way. And If it feels like a big deal, then let it be a big deal. That's absolutely fine and natural to go through that process with.
I think we're not like, it's kind of human nature that we try and repress the feelings, like when we feel like we're struggling or something, we don't like to admit that, like even to ourselves, like we sort of will say, well, I shouldn't be struggling with that, like blah blah blah. And that can be really damaging in itself. Just the way we talk to ourselves about ourselves can be really, really damaging. Like I know I count myself like saying so many times to people like, oh, look after yourself, like make sure you sometimes put yourself first and all this sort of thing. And then, but taking that advice for myself is really hard. Like, if you know what I mean, like sometimes our voice to ourselves is not as kind as it is to other people.
Oh, massively.
Yeah.
You've got to have grace. You've got to have grace for each moment of your day. And when I say grace, what I mean is essentially to be able to like forgive yourself, although I'm not sure that's necessarily like the best word, because forgiveness has all sorts of connotations and with, oh, I've done a bad thing, but actually it's more than that. It's having acceptance is probably a better word. Acceptance of your situation, not feeling shame about it, but actually being like, okay, this is where I am at this moment, and that is absolutely fine. So if you're feeling unmotivated at school on one day, the teachers, I would hope if they're good teachers, would say this as well. That's completely understandable. Actually, don't try and fight against that. Like the worst thing you can try and do to motivate yourself is to try and do more stuff, or think I should be doing more stuff. Let yourself kind of sit in that moment for a bit and go through that and accept that actually in this time, in this reality, that is completely understandable and that is completely okay. And the best of us are going through it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing is as well, something that like coping mechanisms. I have always been a list person, right? So I love a good list, like color coded lists. Like it's quite sad, really. But anyway, that's what I like. But I've been doing that and noticing through lockdown that if I'm feeling good and like having a good day, like the roller coaster of lockdown, if I'm having a good day, a list is a good thing. If I'm having a bad day, the list makes me feel under so much pressure. Like I put way too much pressure on myself. And it's kind of like trying to look at, okay, this is how this makes me feel in this situation, but it just doesn't work all the time. It doesn't work in a positive way for my mental health. Have you got any coping mechanisms that you've found have like helped you throughout lockdown 1 and beyond?
Yes, on the list thing, that actually it's absolutely fine if you only get 3 things on that list done in a day. It's absolutely fine if you only get 1 thing on that list done a day. But one of my favorite things, which I got from a guy called Bob Iger, who was the CEO of Disney until the beginning of this year and has now kind of come back on board, is literally to spend some time each day thinking, okay, what have I managed to do? However small that is, whether that is getting up, cleaning your teeth, getting out the door for a couple of minutes, chatting to your youth worker, whether it's just even coming to a realization of something in your head. List all those things, and that will help to stop you feeling, completely down and out and stuff, and actually help you to remember, okay, maybe I haven't done all of the things which I thought I'd do, but actually I've done the things which are important today, and that is enough. And I'd say as well, so, I mean, I'm a Christian, obviously, and one of the things which has always come back to me is this thing which Jesus says, where he says, basically, don't worry about tomorrow. Today has enough of its own issues. And God will give you, I don't want to use the word truncating. This is kind of bringing a whole load of different verses.
Truncating, what are words?
I know, for computer geeks out there, you'll kind of know that from like tiny URL and stuff like that. Yeah, it's also, I was doing a bit of an impression of Boris before we went on to this, so it's probably partly that.
It's flowing through.
Literally, yeah, I'm channeling the spirit of Boris into this. Don't worry, I'm not.
Oh my gosh.
Not at all.
It's all getting political.
I know. Other politicians are available. There you go. Yeah, and knowing that, giving yourself enough grace again for today, and knowing that you'll have enough grace to get through tomorrow as well. And there's something which Mum said to me at the weekend. My mum, not your mum.
Not my mum.
I don't know your mum.
I mean, no, she's great, but I was just a bit taken aback. But yeah, go for it.
My mum said to me, and she's an occupational therapist, and she did a lot of psychology in her degree. She was talking about the war mentality. You might have heard it mentioned, usually by politicians, that this is a wartime effort, to bring out Boris again there. And what she was saying is actually the thing about the wartime mentality and what got people through the First and Second World War was not thinking about tomorrow, was not thinking about like GCSE results in 6 months or a year's time. It wasn't thinking about whether I'm going to go to uni or what's going to happen at Christmas or whether we're going to be out of lockdown at Christmas. Partly because lockdown wasn't happening then. But it was literally thinking about, it was about staying in the moment. It was about, okay, what can I do to survive in this moment? I think for a lot of us at the moment, we're possibly a bit beyond the feeling of thriving at the moment, and actually into that place where actually we are in survival mode. And so literally just thinking, okay, what can I do today? What do I need to do today just to get me through this next day or so?
Yeah, I think that's so important, having smaller steps, which actually in the wider picture are actually quite big things. Like just getting yourself through things is a big deal at the moment. And we've never been in this situation before, like in our lifetimes. Like I think the last time that any sort of pandemic from a health perspective happened was like on this scale was obviously like the Spanish flu, and that was like 1918. Like it was way before any of us were around. And obviously healthcare has advanced so much since then. But I think as well, we put ourselves under so much pressure. I don't know, I feel, especially as a Christian, like I think to myself, oh, well, I need to just trust that God's got this and blah, blah, blah. And I need to really, it's bad if I feel doubtful. And only recently have I sort of come to the conclusion and the realization that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not always feel like we have the answer, and maybe not that we don't have the answer, because we don't have the answers anyway, but it's okay to struggle and to have questions, and it's just normal. Like, and I think for me this has like highlighted that so much, is that sometimes it can feel like, where is God in all of this? Like, what is going on, and where is God in the chaos?
I think for me as well, one of the big things has been coming to terms with the idea that actually, with that big question, where is God in all of this? It's okay to not know as well, but just to know that actually he loves us and he is here alongside us in it, without necessarily worrying about like why stuff is happening. I'm yet to find any kind of answer at all which would fully satisfy us for the problem of, why does suffering happen in the world? And actually, I think there's a bit of a reason for that. And that's because even if we knew why suffering was happening in the world, why God allowed suffering to happen in the world, or how a world which God created, and if God is meant to be loving, how suffering can happen in the world, it wouldn't satisfy us. So, for example, say that my brother happened to, I don't know, get hit by a bus tomorrow, then in that moment of grieving, it's not going to help me to know, oh, okay, but God allowed him to get hit by a bus because of such and such. Any kind of rationalization isn't going to help then. It might kind of help my head, but actually these are heart things. What I need in that moment is to know that God is there hugging me. I need to know that my friends are there. Social distancing, obviously, makes it an issue. But proverbially, there's another big word.
Hopefully you're not going to be in this situation anyway.
Well, yeah, but in that spirit, hugging me, and just kind of knowing that actually, ultimately, God is in control, and there will be a time when all of this will be resolved, you know. But the most important thing is actually God being there in your heart. And I remember when I was at uni, and my nan suddenly died at that point. And that is a really painful experience. And I remember just before, and I was a new Christian at the time, I just happened to read the verse, Jesus wept. And if you need a memory
verse in the Bible, that is.
Exactly. So that's an easy one for everyone to remember. Even I can remember that one. I'm thinking, well, even Jesus cried when people died. Jesus recognized that this wasn't right. And then kind of having that situation where I then got the phone call later on that night to say that my nan was seriously ill and was going to have quite a sort of, and I won't go into what it was or anything like that. But actually, just from kind of reading that verse, I got a really strong sense that God was with me in this. And so when she did kind of pass away, it was actually a day later. It was painful, but it wasn't as painful as it would have been if I didn't know quite deeply in that moment that, okay, this has happened, but God is absolutely taking care of her, and God is absolutely in control here, and that God absolutely loves her and wants the best for her.
Yeah.
And I think, and mental well-being, which we've kind of talked about a bit in this so far, is a really, really key thing for me, partly because of my own journey over the last year or so. So Charley mentioned a minute ago about coming to terms with the idea that it's okay to not be okay, and that's a journey which I've been on massively over the last 2 years or so. As Charley knows, I went through a phase maybe midway through last year where I'd kind of thought up to that point that everything was kind of hunky-dory. Don't know if you kids still use that word, but
you are so cool. Just wanted you to know that.
Thank you.
It's all right.
Are you talking to me or the you? The you.
I was trying to talk to you, mate, but what are friends for, eh?
Exactly. So are you, Charley. So are you.
Oh, thanks.
Guys, you are so blessed to have Charley as a youth worker, and I know that just in terms of how he is as a friend. Amazing friend, and she kind of comes into this story actually in a minute. Everything felt really, really good at that point. But I remember just getting really, really suddenly run down. I was doing way too much. My granddad died at that moment, and I remember there was a situation where I was rushing back to my family to go to a funeral, and having to kind of put on the brave face, do the kind of thing where I was probably the one who needed to look like they had it together, and to read the Bible verses. By the way, if you ever have to read a Bible verse or a reading at a funeral, it is terrifying, because there's a saying, if you mess up at a wedding when you're reading something, that's fine, that's fun. If you mess up at a funeral, that's a whole different ball game. And everyone was wondering, and lawyers coming up to me afterwards going, "You read the verse so beautifully slowly." I always say to my wife, you need to read slower when you're reading at the front. You need to read slower so that people can hear and stuff like that.
People said that to you afterwards?
Oh no, not they were saying I read really beautifully slowly.
Oh, I was gonna say, mate, whew.
Yeah. And little did they know, half of the reason for that was because I kept losing my place on the page, and so I thought I've got to read slowly so that it sounds right. But yeah, anyway, and I got back that weekend, and I had to go and organise a whole conference and stuff like that, literally the next day for something, and then be somewhere else. And I did the conference, and then the next day, I was meant to go to this other meeting that boring meeting that adults have to do. And I was waiting for the bus to get over there, and I just kind of felt, I can't do this. I literally do not have it in me to do this. And I literally felt like numb, basically, for a good week afterwards. And I remember being on the way to the theatre, and that was the first moment that I started to then think about, okay, if I was going to kill myself at that moment, then how would I do it? And I remember, like, with me, as Charley will know, if I'm not talking, that's a sign that something is going on. I remember being deathly silent all the way to the theatre with my mates and all the way back and during it. And it's a comedy as well. So
what had you gone to see?
Avenue Q.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Great show. Some slightly painful memories for me now, but great show. And I've seen it enough other times to not let that kind of scar it. And in that moment, I literally thought, okay, I'm a youth worker. What would I be telling one of my young people to do? Okay, talk to people about it. Know that it's okay to not be okay. And so I started talking to people about it and taking ownership of that and kind of being, okay, I'm in this situation. I'm not going to hide from it now. I told my boss, I told my mentor as well. Mentoring, by the way, everyone should have one. I think everyone should have one, whether you are like a Christian or not a Christian. Just get yourself a mentor. It'll be like the best thing you've ever done in your life, apart from joining Charley's youth group.
Such a shameless plug.
I know. And yeah, that feeling kept building and building after that. And I remember, like, and I spoke to my boss, and he'd been like, what do you want us to do? Do you want to take some time out of work, or do you want to kind of keep doing work? And I decided in that moment, as my coping thing, actually I needed to carry on doing stuff, but only as much as I could, because I felt that would give me purpose through it and stuff. And I remember it got to one particular night, about probably 2 weeks into it, I'd say, where I was at home alone, and I seriously felt like I could end up doing some damage to myself. And I just rung up Charley in the end, as it happened, and was just like, have you got time to chat? I'm on my own in the house and I'm slightly worried I could do something. And Charley raced over. Charley then suggested going, I think Charley, you suggested going down to the hospital. And I was like, you know what, I need to do this. And Charley,
I think someone had said, someone had said to you about it, and you kept saying about, you know, I could maybe go to the hospital. And I was like, I think it would be a good idea. Your first reaction was, no, I'll be all right. We'll just go for a drive. And then I was like, you sure? And I was like praying, like, please, Lord, help him to make the right decision. And then we ended up, interrupting you.
And that's a great example there, by the way. If you, there's two things there. Firstly, if you are someone who's been in that place or are worried you might be in that place, open up to someone that you trust, whoever that is. If you are a friend and someone that has been opened up to, do not be afraid to point someone towards help, or if necessary, like, walk down there, but don't feel like you have to take on the whole burden of that yourself as well. Charley was absolutely amazing. We went down to the hospital, waited there for about 4 or 5 hours before we got seen. I then spoke to a psychiatrist and actually blurted out about an hour's worth of stuff, which he said was really unusual. It's like, clearly he hasn't met me then. Usually you have to kind of force it out of this thing. And he was just really real. He actually swore quite a bit as well, which weirdly I found quite helpful in that situation.
You were like, yes, letting out my anger.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, I can be real with this guy. He's not being formal. Not kind of necessarily condoning swearing all the time, but actually that really helped in that situation. And kind of cutting a long story short, actually I ended up coming out of that pretty quickly in the end. I was in that situation for maybe a month, 6 weeks in total, but that involved a number of things. It involved owning it, recognizing that actually it was okay for me to be feeling like that, having that grace thing again, talking to other people about it. And the other thing, which I would say was really constant all the way through, for me, was my faith. And I remember at the beginning kind of praying to God, going, Lord, I feel really alone in this. I need you to show me that you care. and him literally answering all of that, because he brought people around me. He showed me, you know, people like Charley, for example, people from church who were just kind of offering to come around and chat to me and stuff like that. I remember going to a meeting in the church where I literally, because I felt, no, I've got to be the ones to talk about this. This is my thing. I need to be the one in control here, essentially. And just bursting into tears in front of them. And actually that being a really good process for me, because actually I got a ton of stuff out at that point. Yeah. So I don't know if that helps at all. I'm kind of just talking off the bat there.
No, thank you so much for sharing that as well, because that's like a big thing. So thank you for that. And I think it also proves that we live in a society that makes us feel like we can't share our emotions. And I know there's been so much in the past, especially the last few years, about like it's okay not to be okay, and all these kind of these movements, be kind and everything like that. With Caroline Flack sadly died as well last year, and I think, was that last year or this year?
Last year, yeah.
I have lost track of all time, to be honest.
Last year, because it's pre-COVID, which I mean technically March is pre-COVID, but yeah, it was last year definitely.
But it's been quite prevalent in the last few years, and I think but there is this particular strain on guys, like not being able to show how they're feeling because it's not encouraged. It's like it's kind of like a lot of those identifying as male will feel that they can't express how they're feeling because otherwise they'll be judged on it, and it's shocking, you know. Like, and I mean, I can't obviously talk because that's not how I identify, but for someone who does, how does that affect the way you navigate society and the culture we live in?
I think the thing is, as well, is it's something which is so ingrained from a really young age. So I think back to with me watching the old Disney movies and stuff like that, and we'd play like prince and princesses, you know, and you'd kind of act like a certain way, and the prince would always be the one who was kind of macho but charming, didn't really show emotions, and felt they had to be the rescuer, massively. Felt they had to be the hero, and you know, and they always have it all together. You notice you very rarely get in a Disney movie. I'd say more so you do now, but back then you very rarely get in a Disney movie a hero who struggled. It's partly why actually I really like Iron Man, because he's someone who he's a hero, but he's not doing it from a place of having it all together. He's someone who actually he's doing it from a place of actually he's got scars, and he's a really great example of someone who actually wears his scars, who uses his scars for good. And I'd say there is nothing in your life that God cannot redeem or use for good. All things, he uses all things for good ultimately. I think me telling that story is a great example of that, by the way, because I'm using that hopefully to help other people know that actually even I get that stuff, and so you can. It's okay if you can too. And I think that from a male point of view, what we really need is to find male role models who model that very well, rather than modeling the pretending to have it all together. My life's perfect, my relationship is perfect, my marriage is perfect. People who are okay to dance in the dark. There's a saying. Dancing in the dark.
That's a nice one. Okay. Is that one you've just made up, Joe?
Literally, yeah.
Well done. Yeah. That, you know, that is art right there.
You can tweet that if you want, or whatever. You can TikTok that. I keep going to. So here's a bit of a side story. This is a sign of my age, according to my youth group. I keep accidentally calling TikTok Tic Tac.
Tic Tac, Tic Tacs, the Tic Tac mints.
Yeah,
they still make them, right?
Yes, they do. Yeah, and every time I do it, I think, oh my gosh, I'm 34 and I'm already turning into my nan. I was just going to say, just wondering if there's anything else I can add on the masculinity thing. I think a lot of it is just being curious about what is going on in your own mind, thinking, okay, I think this. Why do I think this? Okay, or when someone challenges me on something, or when someone says I'm okay, and I get defensive. Why do I get defensive? Why do I, or why do I feel like this? And not being afraid to get in touch with that and wondering. And there's a phrase in the Bible which is about keeping your thoughts captive for Jesus. And I used to think that was like some kind of form of almost like brainwashing yourself. But actually what it is if you imagine like that your brain and your thoughts are like a railway line, they won't replace the railway line all at once, as anyone who's tried to get a train into London on a Saturday will know. It will be, and if you imagine that each one of the planks on the track, say it's an old track, is one of your thoughts. It's about going along that track and noticing your thoughts, noticing which ones aren't helpful, and gradually, one by one, weeding those planks out, pulling those planks out and replacing them with new ones. So, okay, this thought I've noticed isn't helpful. Okay, what is what I would kind of say is I would then try and go to the Bible and go, okay, I've got this unhelpful thought about myself. I think I'm useless at the moment. Okay, that's not helpful. That's not going to motivate me. That's not going to help me grow or get through life. But if I go to the Bible, I see that it says that God loves me. God has purposes and plans for me. And so I can then go, okay, well, if I believe the Bible, then I know that that is true. So I can try and gradually replace that thought with the more healthy one, with the more helpful one. Boom.
It's very important to replace I think that's a lot of what that means, replacing our negative thoughts with focus on good things. And
yeah,
definitely what God wants for us is to focus our minds on good things, because it does definitely influence not only our own minds but the way that we live and the way we influence other people. So definitely, Joe, you have been a legend as always. Thank you ever so much, and thank you as well for sharing that really deep story that I know will be really helpful to a lot of people. So thank you for that. Oh,
can I say one more thing quickly?
You can.
With all of this stuff that I've talked about, I've given a lot of advice and stuff, and it's a lot to take in. If you're worried, thinking, "Oh, I've not got it sorted out. I'm not, I'm not at the place where I can feel okay to not be okay. I'm not at the place where I can start with taking out thoughts and replacing them with Bible thoughts. I'm not even sure I know what I believe about the Bible." I would say that I'm talking about all of this from a place of learning how to do it myself, and that's absolutely fine. I'm awful sometimes at being in touch with what's going on in my heart, and again, just have grace on yourself with it. Yeah, that's all I'd say.
Thank you, Joe. And definitely, to anyone watching, if you're struggling or if there's anything you want to talk through that's arisen for you from watching this, please don't hesitate to contact us and to reach out to people that you trust. I think that's really, really important. So yes, thank you, Joe. And I hope that lockdown number 2 treats you well.
Yeah. Can I pray for your youth group quickly?
Yeah, of course you can. That would be awesome. Yeah. Cheers.
Lord, thank you so much for these amazing young people that have been given such a hard lot this year. That, in a way that I couldn't possibly imagine, having not been at school through that time. I pray that this would build them, that they would know how much you love them, that in those moments where they're sat in their room, not being able to hang out with other people, that they would know that you're sat in the room next to them. You don't have to socially distance either because, well, you're invisible and you don't get corona. Just that they would continue to know that they are loved, and that you say to them, don't worry, I've got this, and I'm holding you, and I'm holding you in my arms, and I'm with you on this, and together we can pull through this. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Joe. I do apologise that my dog yawned halfway through the breath. Anyway, take care, Joe.
You too. Peace out.
See you later. See you.
See you later.